Hello and welcome back to my beginner's guide to the Roland SP-404 Mark II. This is going to be part 2 out of 3, and I'm going to be talking about effects, routing, buses, and resampling. If you missed part 1 where I talked about sampling, editing samples, recording and importing samples, I'll have a link in the description below. You can check that out. But for now, let's go ahead and get going with effects. The SP-404 is well known for having a lot of different very good sounding effects, which range from your more standard delays and reverbs to your more lo-fi based effects like vinyl sim and cassette sim, to your more experimental and performance based effects like the DJ effects looper and a number of other effects that you can use actively while your beat or track is playing back. We have these 6 different buttons up here which you can use to engage and disengage effects. And when you do engage an effect, you'll see there's usually 3 different parameters, which can be controlled by the 3 knobs up here. You'll notice that after you turn the effect on, the parameter screen will go away after a couple of seconds. If you want to get back to that screen without turning the effect back on or off, you can just hold remain and then hit the effect. And that will leave that screen up until you do something else like hit exit. A lot of the effects have additional parameters as well, aside from these 3. You'll notice if you hit the encoder knob, you get more parameters. You also might notice that I hit the filter and drive button, but I actually pulled up a different effect, which is super filter, and that's because these buttons are all customizable. To customize which effects belong on those buttons, you just go into Shift 16, the effects setting, and then you'll use the far right knob up here to scroll all the way over to the direct tab. And this is where we can set these direct effects 1 through 5. The 6th effect here is a multi-effects button, which means you can access any effect. And you'll notice if you hold the button down and you use the encoder to scroll, there's actually quite a few effects that we can access here. If you want to hear what every effect sounds like, I'll link a video in the description below where I play back every effect on the 404, but I'll just give you a brief rundown of what we have here. So starting from the top, we have some of the more experimental effects, scatter and downer. Then these next 4 are Roland specific effects that are also very experimental. SBF is a filter of some sort, I believe. Stopper is like a spin down type effect. Tape echo is a delay, another filter, warm saturator. These are the 2 vinyl effects. I'm a big fan of the 303 vinyl sim. The cassette sim is very good. Lo-fi, which has a bunch of different modes on it. Reverb, chorus, Juno chorus, that's a Roland specific chorus. Flanger, phaser, wah, a lot of the expected usual effects here. Slicer is an interesting one. Tremolo and pan is very useful. Chromatic pitch shifter, that's a very interesting experimental effect. Hyper resonator, same. Ring mod. Crusher. Overdrive, distortion, pretty standard, but they sound great. Equalizer, it's a pretty basic EQ, but it works well. Same with the compressor. And then we get to some more of the Roland specific effects, SX reverb, SX delay, cloud delay. Backspin, it's like another spin down type effect. DJ effects delay is another delay. Filter and drive, resonator, sync delay, isolator, and DJ effects looper. Whenever you turn on an effect up here, you're either putting it on bus 1 or bus 2. So you notice when I push an effect, I'm currently selected on bus 1, so the effect is on bus 1 right now. If I want to get over to bus 2, I just hit this bus effects button, and now I've got bus 2 selected, and I can put a different effect on bus 2. So now I've got super filter on bus 2 and isolator on bus 1. For bus routing, we can run bus 1 and 2 either in series or in parallel, meaning we can run bus 1 into bus 2 or we can run them separately. We can get to that setting by hitting Shift 16 again, and we'll scroll over to the very first tab. And you can see right now I have them running in parallel, meaning that bus 1 is not running into bus 2. So if I've got that isolator on bus 1 and filter on bus 2, anything being sent to bus 1 is not going to be affected by that filter on bus 2. If I want to run them in serial, I just push the encoder, and now everything getting sent to bus 1 will also go into bus 2 as well. In order to pick which samples get sent to which bus, you first select which bus you want to send a sample to. So I'll select bus 1, and then you hold remain and select the sample. Orange means it's being sent to bus 1, and green means it's being sent to bus 2. So if I go back over to bus 2, hold remain, and then select the sample again, now it's green, now it's being sent back to bus 2, while this first sample is being sent to bus 1. If you go ahead and hit it again, it'll actually turn white, meaning it's not being sent to bus 1 or bus 2. I typically like to keep my routing in parallel like this, so I can send my drums and sometimes my bass as well to bus 2, and then everything else to bus 1, so I can perform some of the more active effects on just the drums or everything else. This works great for dropping out the drums in a section too, where I'll keep the bus on bus 2, and then I'll use this mute bus feature, so I'll hit Shift bus, And now bus 2 is muted, so it'll just be dropping out the drums, and then I can bring them back in just like that. Here's a quick demo of what that sounds like. And then I'll often use some of these more performance-based effects on the first bus, and I'll show you what that sounds like as well. So you can see from routing your different samples to the different buses and using the effects on just either bus 1 or bus 2, there's a lot of different possibilities. You can do a lot of different things. Now, aside from bus 1 and bus 2, we also have buses 3 and 4, which are often used for more mastering-based effects like a vinyl sim, EQ, compressor, that kind of thing. We can get into that by going back into the effects setting, Shift 16. Now, you'll see the 2 empty buses over here. Those are buses 3 and 4. We can get over to buses 3 and 4 by using this control knob over here. But there's one little quirk. We can't actually put effects on here until we select a favorite. So we'll go back over to the first tab. And then from here, you can see the favorite is bypassed. We'll just use the encoder knob to scroll through some favorites. And then you can see the buses 3 and 4 now have effects on them. And from here, we can go over and edit and change the effects on bus 3 and 4. These 3rd and 4th buses don't have access to every effect that the MFX has, but they do have quite a few, and they have all of the more compression-based effects, which you might want to use on your mastering chain. I'm personally a really big fan of this 303 vinyl sim. I use it on almost everything. A lot of the more compression-based effects like vinyl sim and cassette sim and lo-fi that you can put on these 3rd and 4th buses are really highly valued by a lot of SP-404 users, and some people will even use this device itself just to run music through and to get some of that compression from those effects. Here's a quick demo of just how drastic of an effect these 3rd and 4th buses can have on your music. It's very much worth taking some time to check out some of these 3rd and 4th bus effects and see which ones you like that work well on your music, as well as customizing the parameters on the effects. In order to do that, we'll use this 3rd knob to go back over to the bus that the effect's on. And then from here, we can either push in to change the effect, or we can simply just scroll down. And now we can use these 3 knobs to change the parameters here. One important thing to note is that these 3rd and 4th bus effects will remain on, and they'll be applied to any of the recording or resampling that you might be doing on the 404. So say, for example, if I've got this noise turned up and I'm recording in with my guitar to a sample, that noise is going to get applied to that guitar sample, which I might not want. So just be cautious of what effects you have and what you're doing while those effects are on. Speaking of resampling, let's talk about that a little bit. Oftentimes you might want to apply multiple effects to one specific sample. So say you want to apply a reverb and an EQ and a compressor to one specific effect without using up all your effects buses for those effects. You can take one sample and apply each effect individually and write it to a new sample. So I'll go ahead and take this sample, which is a guitar, and I'm going to write a delay to it. So I'll go ahead and turn on my tape delay. And then from here, I'll go ahead and hit resample. And then this is very similar to the normal record mode. I'm going to go ahead and pick which pad I want to record to. And then I will go ahead and play back the guitar sample now. And then I'll go ahead and hit record. And now I've got that same guitar sample with the tape delay recorded directly to it. I could go ahead and resample it again with, let's say, the isolator. Let's say I want to cut some of the lows out of it. I'll go ahead and select resample again, select a new pad, and then play the delayed guitar sample back. And then I'll go ahead and hit either record or resample, it doesn't matter. And now I've got the delayed isolated guitar sample here. Now at this point, maybe I want the isolated delayed guitar sample back here, so I can use exchange and switch those two. And then maybe I could delete these two now as well. And now I've resampled my original guitar sample into a new sample that has a couple of different effects on it. Once you get used to this resampling workflow, it's pretty quick and easy. Just, again, be aware that when you're deleting samples, those are gone forever. They're not coming back. All I have now is my resampled sample there. So just be cautious when deleting. There's also one other really important setting to be aware of when resampling, and that is in this input setting. So if I hit Shift Input Settings down here, this middle setting is the routing, and it can either be set to mix or external in. And that involves when resampling or using Skipback with the mark, which I'll talk about in a moment, what is being resampled or recorded in the Skipback. So if you have this set to external in, it's only ever going to be recording the line inputs on the back, the USB-C from the back, as well as the input on the front. So in the case of resampling, if I was trying to resample my guitar sample onto a new sample here, it would seem like that should work, but notice I've got nothing on this new sample. It's because my routing was set to external in. That needs to be set to mix in order to do resampling from other pads. The reason this routing option exists is for recording and skipback purposes. So if you have it set to external in, you can go ahead and play a beat or a pattern and hit record and record in, and you'll just be recording whatever you have plugged into your external inputs. So you could be playing guitar along with a beat and recording to a pad, but you're only recording the guitar that's plugged in. The same goes for the Skipback feature, which you can access using the mark button here. Skipback is a recording feature that the SP-404 has, where it's constantly recording, and it's going to keep the last 40 seconds of everything that's coming through the device if you've got your routing set to mix. If you've got your routing set to external in, it'll keep the last 40 seconds of the external inputs. There is one setting to be aware of that controls how long that skipback is recording for. So if you go into Shift 13 to get to Utility, go into System, and then scroll down to the mark function here. This SBS def is the shorter one. I think it's 25 seconds. If you go over to long, that's the 40-second one. So if you keep it on that, the mark button will always have the last 40 seconds of what playing. It also accounts for silence. So after about 3 seconds of silence, it stops recording. This means if you're playing something and then you take a break and you go grab a drink or something, you come back, it won't be recording for 40 seconds of nothing. It'll keep that last 40 seconds of the actual audio that was playing, which is really useful. So I'll go ahead and show you how that works. If I go ahead and hit a few different samples, I can see that my mark button is glowing now, and if I go ahead and hit it, I've now got the last 40 seconds of what was playing. So I can go ahead and use the sub pad to play this. And then from here, I can use the start and end knobs up here to control which part of the sample I want to grab. And then from there, I can go ahead and put it on a new pad. So I'll hit record, and then I'll select a new pad. And now I have that back on a new pad. This is really useful for those experimental effects where you might be messing around and doing something, and all of a sudden you do something that sounds really, really cool. You can go ahead and hit mark and grab whatever that was and assign it to a new pad. This is one of the more unique features of the SP-404 that makes it really good for experimenting and trying new things. As far as effects go, there's actually one other section for effects, and that is back in this input setting. We have input effects. So if we go ahead and push on the encoder, it'll bring us to the input effects menu. And then from here, we can push in and scroll through the different input effects. And you'll notice that some of these are actually new effects that we haven't seen either on the MFX up here or on the bus 3 and 4 effects. So we have auto pitch, vocoder, harmony, and guitar amp sim. I believe that's it for new effects. And then after that, it's a lot of the similar effects from MFX up here. These are obviously more geared towards plugging in instruments. So auto pitch would be similar to like an auto tune, vocoder, harmony. This will add some harmonies to a vocal mic that you have plugged in. So you can pick the key and then the interval of what you want that harmony to be. And then the guitar amp sim, there's a few different guitar amp sims here that are pretty good. They're pretty serviceable. I've used a number of them. I'll put a description of what they are on the screen right here from the manual. They're really quite serviceable and they sound really good. They're pretty useful. I almost always use this guitar amp sim instead of setting up a guitar amp and putting a mic up to it. This is just much simpler and quicker, and it sounds pretty good. And then the last thing I want to mention is there's some extra settings in the effects setting here. So I'll go ahead and hit Shift 16 and then scroll all the way over to the right. There's some interesting stuff here. So you can change the input effects here. You can also just change that in the input settings. You can change the input bus routing. So this can either be dry or it can go into bus 1 or bus 2 from the input. And then the dry routing is when we have the pads white as opposed to being orange set to bus 1 or green sent to bus 2. If we have this set to bus 3, those samples will go into bus 3 and bus 4. Whereas if we have it set to dry, those samples will go directly to the output. And then we can also change what's on the MFX top here. So the first effect that comes up when you hit MFX after you start up your 404. So hopefully you found that useful. In part 3, I'll be talking about patterns, pattern editing, and pattern chaining so you can chain patterns together to create an entire track. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.